Hello to all of you moms out there. This is episode 21 of the Solve for Mom podcast. I'm your host, Anuki Kapasi. Is your life in constant overdrive? And are you trying to keep like 37 things spinning, basically making it from one moment to the next, fueled by another cup of coffee? Well, today I'd like to decode how moms can thrive under this overwhelming pressure to do it all. And we're going to do this by stealing tricks from our very own cells using my DNA formula. That's right, we're going to be using my DNA formula so that you can get your days and activities to work for you. I'm going to help you build a daily rhythm that aligns with your life goals without taking away from your family time. So get out your notepads and let's dive in. Welcome to the Solve for Mom podcast. Do you love spending family time together every day but realize that your own interests have fallen to the wayside? Do you have a long list of things you wish to learn but you're so tired from trying to balance it all on your own and frustrated from not planning ahead to make it happen? Have you been mom for so long that you've lost track of who you are as an individual? Hi, I'm Anoki. I'm a PhD biomedical researcher, homeschooling mom, and life coach. I too poured myself into being a mom and thought I had to stop doing the things that I love to do. I was struggling to make time for myself, had lost my sense of direction, and kept second-guessing myself. I wanted to take back control of my purpose and passions, but I kept telling myself there'll be plenty of time for that later. Until I did what was natural to me. Using the methods of a scientist, I created plans to prioritize my values, organize my time, and take action towards my goals. If you're ready to go questing for your purpose, level up your learning, and confidently pursue your passions while still being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this complex equation we call life, it's time to sharpen our pencils and our minds and solve for mom. I'd like to welcome all of you to sign up as a Solve for Mom Insider. This is where you can get my free twice-monthly newsletter. The newsletter ties all of my strategies and tips from my recent episodes together using actual stories from my personal life and from behind the scenes of my passion project turned business. It is full of personal growth and mom life productivity tips, self-discovery prompts, interactive polls, resources that I find useful, and also where I reveal special offers just for members. Spoiler alert, you might want to get on before I send out my newsletter this week. So all you have to do is go to my website, solveformom.com, and sign up or click the newsletter form in the show notes below. All right, let's get back to the show. It's overwhelming when you think about how much we are trying to manage as moms. I mean, I remember when my life felt like I was in fast forward all the time and there was no stop or pause button. I was forgetting to sign my kids up for their fun activities, or I was bringing them to places at the wrong time. And then at the end of a long day, when I'm exhausted, I would come home and feel so depressed because my home felt so disorganized. I was putting all of my energy into my career, but I didn't plan ahead for my family, or find time to do household tasks, or even let myself think about what I needed. This expectation to do it all creates a cycle of overcommitment and exhaustion for us. I mean, let's be honest. What's fueling your day? Is it coffee or your purpose? Not only do we have a lack of support, we have difficulty in figuring out what our priorities are, but we also feel very low on time. How is a mama expected to maintain sanity under these conditions, right? I realized that there are 3 things that I had to do in order to make sure that I had balance in my life. I mean, specifically, I was balanced in my energy. And I summarized these 3 things in the DNA formula. The beauty of this formula is that it's sort of a metaphor for managing our mom lives. And it also refers to the fact that our cells also use smart organizational strategies to survive and thrive, largely dictated by DNA, which is the very essence of life. But also, DNA is an acronym that you can use to help you remember how to balance your energy and get rhythm in your day. So the first part of the DNA formula is D, which stands for divide and delegate. In the biological setting, our cells divide as a natural course of living and growing, or even when they need to repair because of sickness or when we experience injury. And all of that is dictated by our DNA, which is our genetic template. And cell division is a really efficient process, and it requires the coordination and activation of multiple molecular pathways. And this one goal of cell division is delegated to many multiple regulatory cells. and they all share this responsibility to ensure the quality of cell division. In our mom lives, delegation is key. I read the results of a survey recently that showed that mothers work an average of 98 hours per week, which is basically like 2 full-time jobs. Imagine trying to do that day in, day out as one person. You'd have to be superhuman. And I've been there so many times when the moment calls for me to be doing more than one thing at the same time. Like even the other day, I was managing homeschool, I was dealing with the deadline for work, and I had to think about preparing dinner. In times like that, you really do feel overburdened. But one of the ways we can get a lot of that done is through delegation. It's all about the focus funnel and deciding whether your task can be eliminated, delegated, automated, or executed. After you've decided the tasks that need to be eliminated, those are things that actually aren't necessary in your life or aren't adding any value to your life, then I actually think that the most important tier in the focus funnel is delegating. Now, I've talked about the focus funnel in a previous episode, so I'm linking that in the show notes. But today, I'm really just focusing on delegating. Okay, so if delegating is the solution, how do we do this? So what you do is you make a list of all your responsibilities. Everything that you know must get done. Remember, at this point, you've already removed anything that you think can be eliminated. And so of those responsibilities, you then determine which of those things can other people handle. Is it laundry, like my kids do for me? Maybe it's alternating with your husband as to who cooks dinner that night. Can you carpool with other families to get your kids to and from other activities? In our homeschool, we even have my kids' grandparents tutor them in subjects that they enjoy teaching so that I don't have to handle all aspects of homeschooling. And by the way, if you have young kids or are just starting to hand your kids responsibilities for home care, please know that this is a process, but it is totally worth it. I just want you to know how important it is to do this. You are actually doing them a favor by giving them the gift of this life skill and teaching them how to be competent individuals. And it does take time at first, and sometimes you feel like you're moving backwards and things take longer when you do them with your kids. But over time, they are going to want to emulate what you're doing, and eventually they really are helping you. And I tell my kids all the time, I wouldn't ask you if you weren't saving me time. I'll actually quantify it for them. You've saved me 15 minutes, and now we have more time to play together. And so sometimes it feels like it'll go faster if you just do it yourself. And when you delegate, it's sometimes more work for you or it takes a little longer. But that is just for a brief window of time because that's the investment you make initially for you to save time down the line. And the other part of the D, which is divide, is very simple. It's just taking big tasks and breaking them down into smaller bite-sized pieces. And then you can either deal with the task one little bite-sized piece at a time. You can take the entire project and spread it over a longer timeline by doing a little piece each day at a time. For example, this is exactly what I do with my home cleaning system. I don't do everything in one day. I spread it out over the course of a month, and my home stays clean. And so I'm spending 15 minutes a day cleaning my house, but my house stays clean every day. Or you can take each of those smaller chunks of your project and you do some of them and delegate the rest using the method I just explained. And N is for nurture your energy. And you do this by first being self-aware of what your energy levels are, as well as what the demands of the day are. We moms need to maintain our energy throughout the day in order to be productive. Because if we're inefficient with our energy, then we're going to experience burnout. And we know that burnout is the ultimate productivity killer. So how do we avoid getting drained as our day wears on? Well, once again, let's take inspiration and follow the cellular paradigm. What do our cells do? Well, in our cells, the mitochondria are the energy-producing organelles. They're the powerhouse. They manage and produce the energy. And just like us, where we need consistent energy in order to function optimally, our cells do the same thing with the help of the mitochondria. And so there's two things that stand out to me. One is that the mitochondria are in constant communication with the rest of the cell to regulate how much energy it needs to produce. So for us, we need to first be aware of what things we do that drain us and what also recharges us. For example, I am very seasonally oriented and I thrive in the summer and the sun clearly produces a lot of energy in me. Whereas in the winter, I'm always fighting fatigue and I do burn a lot of calories and use up a lot of energy just trying to stay warm. Another example is that working really late into the night affects my energy levels the next day. And the second thing that we can learn from the mitochondria is that they're able to convert nutrients from food into ATP, which is basically the energy currency in our cells. So they have an input requirement in order to have this output requirement. Well, what about us? What fuels us? I want you to make a list of energy-producing activities. So that could be maybe getting outside and taking a walk while you get some fresh air, or perhaps making a tasty, nourishing protein shake or some other favorite form of hydration. It could be emotional energy like cuddle time with your kids, or being mentally energized by spending time on a hobby. It could be literal fuel like keeping a snack with you anytime you go on an outing. When you plan ahead and know that you have some energy-draining activities, pair that with one of the fueling activities that's on your list. There's so much you can do. You can plan ahead to set yourself up for success. You can ensure that you're preserving as much energy that you start off with. And then afterwards, you can do things to make sure you're replenishing your energy as well. And the last thing in the DNA formula is A, which is to adapt to your environment. Have you guys heard of epigenetics? DNA expression is basically when our genes get turned on or off. And that can actually change based on environmental cues. So basically, our genetic machinery can respond and turn genes on or off based on what we have been exposed to. We've learned with epigenetics that these effects can actually be very long-lasting, over generations. So our children and their children may actually benefit from our ability to respond to environmental cues in our lives. We can actually take a page out of that book. For us moms, we can adjust our routines to align with the seasons of our lives. And when we do this, we're actually modeling for our children so that they can benefit too. This is really important to do because rigid routines are going to fail. They may not fail the first time, but eventually there is going to be a breaking point where if you don't adapt, what you're doing is not going to work. I'm really guilty of this. Sometimes I am just so slow to react and to pick up on the signs that like the wind has changed, so to speak, and I should be adjusting my plans accordingly. See, I'm a planner. Of course, you must know that by now. And it's really great to have a plan, to be ready, efficient, productive, and organized with your time and energy. It's all the stuff that I teach about here. But sometimes I am so set on my idea of that plan that I worked really hard to create that I forget to just allow that plan to be set aside if it doesn't serve a purpose in a certain situation anymore. Having flexibility ensures sustainability during changing circumstances. So how do you do this? You have a plan, but now the situation's changed and maybe you even recognize that your plan isn't going to apply. What do you do? Well, one, something that I need to work on as well is to accept that some days are just going to be chaotic, and that's really okay. For example, what if you're set on a really long family outing and you've planned quite hard for this, but then something changes, like maybe the weather turns, or you wake up and you see that the energy in your home is just really low that day. Maybe a child is even coming down with something. I hope not, but I'm sure we've all come across that at some point as moms. We just have to be able to adjust. And so recognizing that you're going to need to adjust is step one. And then the second part is to plan in anchor points. I like to have at least one anchoring activity each day for each time block that I have. So my time blocks look something like this. Like I'll have a morning block. That's when I do my morning routine, get a couple of house errands done, and do some quick hits for work. And then I have my homeschool block. And then I have all the things that happen after homeschool through dinner time. And then I have my work block because I tend to work in the evenings after my kids have gone to bed. Within each block, I would like to pick one thing that has to happen in order for that block to be considered successful. That's not to say that everything else is not important. For example, in our homeschool, we study many subjects in one day, and for most days, I do expect to get through all of that. But I like to mentally anchor that block with one big thing that I really hope gets done, and anything after that is kind of a bonus. Because sometimes it's the case that I have all these plans, but my kids really want to go down this rabbit hole of one topic. And of course, I'd like to let them go on this deeper dive and explore. And so to make sure that when we go off on a tangent and explore something that I hadn't planned on doing, at some point we do have to get the rest of our work done. So what I've done is that I plan in these buffers to allow for all the adjustments. So by buffered, I mean that there are opportunities for us to catch up here and there when I need that to happen. And I do this for most areas in my life. Anything from like catching up on folding clothes to social time with my friends to work. And I have this time set aside for each of these things. And so if one thing doesn't get done when I expect it to, then I'm not freaking out because I have another opportunity to do it. But the important thing is that you operate and plan as if it's going to happen. And you strive to do that. Because this isn't going to work if you constantly rely on everything being put into catch-up mode. But this just allows you to not have to be so rigid with your schedule or put too much pressure on you when things don't go exactly according to plan. So here's another example with this. I usually set aside time for folding my clothes during the weekend. But sometimes we're out all weekend. But I still want to get all the clothes folded. So I have a backup time to make sure that I can get this done. And that's it. It's so simple, right? A couple of you have actually told me that you enjoy having these formulas and terminology to help you remember what to do. So today's episode was about how to balance your energy so you can go from overwhelmed to being in a state of total zen. And you can handle whatever comes next. And so we learned how to do that with the DNA formula. D is for divide and delegate, N is to nurture yourself, and A is to adapt. Remember, your kids are watching you. They see that you're getting things done without losing your mind. They see you planning, preparing, and adjusting. And they're learning how you hold yourself to these high standards, but you also know how to delegate and ask for help when you need. You take time to take care of yourself and your energy levels, and you know how to go with the flow. So that sounds amazing. You are amazing. So thank you guys for listening and taking the time to learn how to show up for yourself and your family. I hope today's episode will help you create time and freedom to pursue something you love to do. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe and tell other ambitious mamas about it. Who knows, you might even make a new friend by sharing a tip. It's all free. By the way, it would be amazing to hear what you think about the show when you leave a review. After all, my passion is to make this a great experience for you. Thank you for making my show a part of your day. I'll see you next week for another episode of the Solve for Mom podcast with Anoki Kapasi.